This video is a continuation of the previous video. So if you haven't already watched the previous video, then I strongly recommend going through that one first and then starting back here. Furthermore, in this video, we are going to be using variables that we created in the previous video, in particular, this data matrix, my data. So if you are just starting up again with a fresh Matlab, then you will need to run all of this code up here. This is for importing the data in order to create this variable, because here we are going to write out that the data in that variable into a new text file that will be a text file that has mixed text and numbers suitable for importing into some spreadsheet program like Microsoft Excel. Now, in the previous section, I showed you how to export numeric data. There's several easy ways to export numeric data, like DLM write or CSV write, but those only work for numeric data. Here we want to mix text data and number data, and so we need a more flexible method. So you will see, as I explain this code down below, you will see a lot of the same functions and a lot of the same kind of formulaic approaches that we use to import data. So let's start by using this function again, fopen, and then here I have a data file name. Now what's different from the previous video is that data file had to exist somewhere. This data file does not exist. I do not have a file on my computer called data_output for spreadsheet.txt. However, by using this W input here, the second input, this indicates to Matlab that we want to write into a file. So Matlab is actually going to create a new file on my computer with this name here. Okay, so what we want to do is, let me dump out this thing again so you can see this data matrix. So I want to write out a file that contains these 4 columns, but I also want to add a new column. I want that new column to be the first column, and that should be the name, because these are each row corresponds to data from a different person, a different individual. So I want the first column to have the name of that person, and those names are Billy and Bob. So now what we are going to do, let me see, I have to run these lines of code, and then these are the column headers. So this is the column headers. The first column is the name, and then the trial, choice, RT, and accuracy. So that means that the data file here or the data matrix has 4 columns, but the file that I want to write out is going to have 5 columns. So you can see that this is already a more complicated situation than what a function like DLM write or CSV write is capable of handling. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is write out this file one row at a time. And so I'm going to start by writing out the first row, which is the header row. So I'm going to loop over the variable labels, that was this vector here. And I'm using this function fprintf. So this is file print into a file. And then the first input is fid, so that's the file identifier. That's telling Matlab where I want the text file to be, the data to be written to. And then here I have the formatting string. Now this looks like a really weird set of characters, %s and then /t. So this is telling Matlab that we are going to do a substitution. This is a replacement, and the %s is for string. If you want to write out a number, you're going to use %g. You'll see that later. So we're going to write out a string. Now I haven't yet told Matlab what that string is. I'm just telling Matlab, hey, get ready to write out a string. And then this /t is for tab. So this is going to be tab delimited string. So we are going to write out one string and then a tab. And then inside this for loop, we keep writing more and more and more strings and tabs until we get to the end of this vector here. So now Matlab says, okay, I am prepared to write out a string. You have to tell me what string to write out. And that's what we achieve with the next input here. So this is telling Matlab it's the var ith element in this vector variable labels, this cell array. You can see again, by the way, that I'm using an I at the end of this looping index to indicate to me that this is a looping variable. Okay, so I'm going to now run all of this code, And I can show you what this text file already looks like. So here's the text file. It's data output for spreadsheet, and it only contains one row of data. And it is exactly what I've created here. Now you'll notice also there's a tab after each of these columns. There's also a tab after accuracy. So in this particular case, that's fine, but this is something to be aware of, that when you're using exactly this construction like this, you're going to end up with an empty tab at the end. If you don't want that, you're going to have to write you can embed an if statement here to say, if this is not the end of the vector variable labels, then add a tab. Okay, so then we want to add a new line character. So I'm just going to add another space between this row of column headers and the actual data. So fprintf file identifier and then /n. This is for new line. Notice it's kind of similar to here. So this is a tab and this is a new line. And then we have a loop that goes over size my data 1. So this is the number of rows in my data, which in this case is 2. So it's not going to be a huge data file, but of course this is for educational purposes. Okay, so here we print out the first column in this row. So this is looping over rows. The first column in this row is going to be the name of the subject. That's this variable that I defined earlier, Billy and Bob. And then we loop over every column, and then we print out the columns. And now this is really similar to the code I showed you above, except I'm using %g, and that tells Matlab that we are going to export or write out a number instead of a string. And now the thing is, you have to explicitly put in an end-of-line character here, just like what I did here. So we write out one row of data, and then we write a new line character. Now this is done in a loop, and a loop is convenient because I don't have to know a priori exactly how many columns there are. If you know exactly how many columns there are, you could also write out the data like this. So here I have string tab, and then so this first string is for the subject name, and then I have a number tab, number tab, number tab, number tab, and then sorry, not the last one is new line, not tab. And then here I have all of these variables that I'm going to write out. So this line of code is exactly the same as these lines of code here. The only difference is that here we have to know a priori exactly how many columns there are, and here we don't have to know. All right, so let me comment this back. And then notice, this is pretty interesting, I'm using fprintf again. It's exactly the same function, except here I have the first input be fid, file identifier, and here I don't have that same first input. I just go directly to the text that I want to write out. Now, when you don't include a file identifier, Matlab will print out this information in the command window. So I can run that here. And, okay, well, I didn't, let's see, I have to initialize this variable, and now I will be able to run this. So now Matlab wrote out a friendly help message that said, finished writing line 1 of 2. Okay, so let me close this because I opened this file already. And then, so now I'm going to press Control Enter and run all of the code in this cell. This says, finished writing line 1 of 2 and finished writing line 2 of 2. And now we can see the completed data file looks like this. So we have the first row is the column headers, and then we have the name of the individual, and then all of the values for these different data observations. So I hope you enjoyed this video and the previous video. This was about flexible importing and flexible outporting of data using advanced formatting tools. So we covered a lot in the past two videos. I introduced you to a lot of functions that were probably new for you and some concepts that might have been new for you. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it a worthwhile use of your time. Stay tuned. The next couple of videos are going to be also really fun. We're going to do some exercises and make some games to, that is Matlab exercises, not physical exercises. So you can still stay in your chair and relax.